Yeah, let me share my screen. If I can get this right, it'll always be good as well. There you go. Look at that. Wow. Here we are. So let's preface this like we always do. Welcome to the London Power Platform User Group. It is over a year since we locked down now. I've eaten most of my siblings, and I've managed to do all sorts of crazy things like cut my own hair. I've gone slightly crazy, then slightly sane. I've put on weight, I've lost weight. The world has turned upside down, yet we're still here, and somehow we have managed to carry on. We've been Boris, we've been Trumped, we've been COVID, we've had everything. And tonight we have got what I think is probably one of the finest lineups of speakers we've ever had. Just from the aesthetic point of view, by far the best looking bunch of power appers. I know I'm not allowed to say that, power platform people that we've ever seen, but by God, these people are just absolutely fantastic, phenomenal people, and I could listen to them speak all night. But we would ask that you be aware of others in the fact that we are all locked down. So please don't kill your children or your family whilst you're watching this, dancing around with excitement, throwing your hands in the air and your laptop in the air, saying, oh my goodness, look at that incredible thing that somebody's spoken about. Be friendly and patient. Not to the people around you, because guess what? There is no one, because I'm alone. Be welcoming and respectful of others when we do have a chat later on, and be open to all questions and viewpoints. Be understanding of our differences, because yes, I am ginger, and no, it's not contagious. But above all, be kind and considerate to others, especially me. So tonight we have Carmen and Louisa, two absolutely incredible power platform enthusiasts. I remember meeting Louisa for the very first time when she was sitting at the front of the audience, the odd one out, with a sketch, feverishly sketching away on a surface. And I wondered, what the heck is she doing? And it was only when I looked on Twitter at Ignite, and I hadn't met her yet, that I realised that that's who that was. And it was through the community that I ended up bumping into Louisa, and it's just one of the most bright, interesting people that you come across. Tamsin, absolutely. Carmen, absolutely magical Lego enthusiast along with Louise, and they are going to be looking about templatizing and collaboration, contracting workshops, and provisioning teams that organisations will love. So that's awesome. And then we've got the absolute man mountain of Benedict coming along, getting started with Power Platform ALM. Now I shall waggle my finger at everybody and not be kind to everybody. ALM is one of the most misunderstood and undervalued parts of any power platform solution. I shall tell you for why. When you're in SharePoint land and you come running to Dataverse because you realize it's so much better, you come over to Dataverse and you're looking at it and you've got your solution and you sit there and you go, yeah, it's great, but now I need to do dev test prod. And when you come to do it, you've got to export the solution, and it's so slow and painful. And you're sitting there going, I just like literally, I need to put the broccoli on because the dinner's cooking, but I kind of waiting and I want to see what happens. Are there dependency issues? I don't know. Over and over and over again, all of a sudden you've wasted like a day and a half, 2 days of your project, and no one's going to be happy with that. Well, ALM will help you do that in a very succinct and wonderful way, and Benedict is an absolute master of it. Before we get started tonight, let's just give a shout out to the upcoming events. Now, I am always perplexed by this slide. I remember last year standing here commenting that the year before that, we would see events months apart on this list. As you can see, we are talking about events days apart, if not on the same day. Okay, that's how big Power Platform's got, and that's how big it's grown, and it's continuing to get big. And why is the Power Platform, why does it have so many events? Because there's so many of us who have seen success, who want to share our success with others. And that's the key to this platform. That's the key to its success, and that's the key to its growth. So we need to keep doing that and keep pushing and bring more people along for the journey. So to that, Louisa, Carmen, please take it away. I shall stop sharing.
Okay, so here we go. Hello and welcome to our session. I would like you to do me a favor, so please turn on your camera because I totally hate to talk into that void. So it's just like my camera, but so please turn on your camera, and I don't mind if your hair is not just like freshly done, but it's a COVID haircut. So please do that. Yeah. So yes, Alan, you are beautiful as always. Thank you for that. And after that, I will just go ahead and share my screen. And then do this session together with Carmen. Okay, so we want to talk about custom tailoring your team's experience and how an app could guide your users through a collaboration contract and provision a solution. And so what we had in mind is quickly explained, but first I want to introduce myself properly. So Keith said some very, very nice and weird words about me, but I usually say I'm an M365 consultant, I'm MVP for Office Asset Services, newly a member of the PnP team, low-code developer. I sit in a few of councils. I'm a senior nerd. I blog a lot on m365princess.com. I run a sticker shop at pimpyourowndevice.com, and you can find me 24/7 on Twitter. Okay, and now it's your time, Carmen. Please introduce yourself.
So I'm Carmen. I'm a senior Power Platform developer based in Belgium, and I'm also a serial learner, which does not kill you, and neither does it kill me. It just means that I want to learn a lot, and I'm always eager to learn new things to gain more knowledge, which will also play a part later on during the presentation. I have a small dog, which I love very much. I blog on digipersonal.com, and you can also find me on Twitter at Carmen IJswijn. Don't worry if you can't pronounce the last name. It's even hard for people in Belgium to pronounce it correctly.
So, which is exactly the reason why I'm learning Dutch, just to pronounce your name correctly. Okay, so sometimes if we develop an app, regardless if we do this as makers or as pro developers, it's just like we figure out, hey, it is just like super simple. And this is, of course, what Microsoft had in mind when they developed Teams. Just like make it a very, very super simple, intuitive UI so everyone gets what you need to do and how you should behave. Yeah, well, so we know how this goes in Teams, and we know that there are just like endless possibilities how to use Teams, and that users are kind of overwhelmed. So in my experience as a consultant, either they don't change their working behavior at all. So they abused tools before Teams, and now they do this in Teams, and it doesn't get better with that. Or they are totally confused when to use what. And then they will ask consultants, like, hey, what should I use when, or what is the best approach? And what do we say as consultants? We say it depends. And this always leaves our users like kind of clueless, because organizations then need to buy a lot of days by functional consultants so that they could explain when to use what and how to guide people through a collaboration contract. So for everyone who does not know, collaboration contract is kind of a document which is the result of a workshop in which you define how do we want to work together. So what would we want to do for task management? How are our expectations regarding responsiveness or availability? Where would we store our documents? How should we handle ad mentions, and so on? So it's just like setting the stage on how collaboration could work. And of course, where admins are involved, they will seek for, okay, so we will figure out how it works, and then we will just templatize that. So we will provide templates on how people should work. And I don't know how you feel about it, but there is no one-size-fits-all t-shirt when it comes to the use of Teams. So what Carmen and I had in mind was we would not say, hey, we all figured it out, so this is the way how to do it, but we would like to let users decide. And we would like to let users decide by an app and actually make it their decision, because what is true for pro developers is true as well for makers. So we are not our user. So we should not be assumptuous or be biased or already know everything about our user or assume that we know it, but be open for it. So we thought, what if we made a Power App to templatize one of those workshops, not the team, but one of those workshops, so that an app could guide our user through this collaboration contracts. And we did that by defining what we call our minimal viable product, not but our minimal lovable product. So what is a minimal lovable product for us? We want to provide information about channels and libraries and lists and the planner and a wiki and why you should never use that. We want to guide our user through decisions. And after our user made all the decisions, we want to provision that team, including all requested assets. Okay, so what do we need for that? And I think already Carmen is taking over. So Carmen, would you like to cover that as well?
Yeah, sure. So what do we need in order to build that app and to make sure that we can then use that input from the user to create the team that they need, to create the team that they requested? We need, of course, a Canvas app to build the UI, to give information to the user about what is a team, why would you use different channels, why would you use maybe a SharePoint list, why is the wiki a bad idea and we will not be giving it to you, whereas you might see it in other teams. All of that we need to put into an app. And then, of course, get the information from the user, what is the name of their team, which channels they will want in it, and then other resources that we want to add to it. We are also going to work with an Azure Logic App flow instead of a Power Automate flow to provision the team. Why we'll talk about in the next slide. We'll need an let's talk about
I thought that this was the wake up.
We'll also need an app registration in Azure AD so that we can use that to send HTTP requests to Graph so that we can provision the team and we can provision the resources that we want to. We are going to use Dataverse for Teams because, yes, we were, or at least I was born in SharePoint land, or I started my journey in SharePoint land, but I quickly learned that SharePoint is not a relational database. So we're making the jump to Dataverse, and then specifically to Dataverse for Teams because it's just a bit easier on our wallets. It's not that expensive as complete Dataverse, as full-blown Dataverse. And we'll be needing a service account to perform specific actions inside the Azure Logic app. But Louise and I are both Power Platform people. So why did we go for Azure Logic apps? And there are many reasons. And now you can, yes, perfect. The first reason is because it is cost efficient. So I got my first invoice for my Azure subscription about a month ago, which was a full 11 euro cents. Yes, 11 euro cents. This is not a part of the invoice. It's the complete invoice. And I checked and looked at how many runs this was. So this is when I, with tests and everything, this is 24 runs of the main Logic app. There might have been some additions and some changes, but it's still a long way from the 33.70 euros that you pay for a Power Apps per user plan, and even far away from the 8.40 euros that you pay for a per app plan. So even if your users will be creating a lot more teams in each month, that price is a lot lower. Our app is also large scale, so it's not a personal application for one user. It's something that we will provide, or that you will provide as an organization to the users. So it fits better with Azure Logic apps. Also from a licensing perspective, HTTP calls are standard in Logic apps, whereas you need a premium license in Power Automate. It's a lot easier to deploy and distribute because you can put a lot into parameters, which then makes it a lot easier to reuse information inside your flow. And it runs in the context of an application by default. So also not as a user, which just makes everything a lot easier to create those teams because one user can only create so many teams, but an application can do that, can create an unlimited amount of teams. So of course, that's also something to think about. And as I mentioned before, I'm a serial learner. I know Power Automate. I know how to create a Cloudflow. I didn't know how to create an Azure Logic app. So when given the choice, I decided that, well, yeah, let's learn that new thing. Let's learn Azure Logic apps. And I figured it out. So that means that I've now learned something more. How did we set up the Logic apps? I already talked about the main Logic app, but we have one flow to rule them all. So the way that the entire flow is built up is that there is one main flow, and then that calls several child flows. So that main flow rules all of those small child flows. Why did we do it that way? Because it is reusable. So you can, one of those smaller flows you can, or logic apps, I still haven't figured out what is the right way to talk about those kinds of things, but I'm still going to call them flows. One of those small flows you could easily reuse in another solution. So let's say there is a flow that will, or there's a logic app that will create a list with columns in it. If you want to have a different solution where you can, or you're also going to create a list with columns, let's say that you are also going to create a solution to provision a SharePoint site, you can reuse that one logic app in that other solution as well, which makes it a lot easier. It's also easy to extend the solution because you don't need to change the logic of those child flows. You just need to change the logic of the main flow. And those child flows don't care about the logic in the main flow. They just care about their one task, which is either creating a list, creating a library, or creating a planner, or creating the team. They only care about that. And the main flow takes care of the entire logic. The main flow decides that the list will be created in the SharePoint site that is linked to the team, that the channels are created in the team. It will, and that's not something that the child flows need to worry about. So what do we have in our solution? We have that main flow, and then we have I think it's 5 child flows, so 3 types. We have one child flow where we are going to create the team with the channels. And yes, we are going to delete the dreaded wiki because we don't want to work with the wiki. And in this first flow, we are not adding the owner yet, but we are adding a service account as an owner to the team so that the owner doesn't see all of the resources being added one by one. They just get the team completely when it's finished. Then we have 3 flows for now to create some resources. One will be a list with some columns in that SharePoint site linked to the team, a library with columns, so apart from the general document library, we will have an additional library with some columns, because sometimes our users just need more than one library. And we are creating a planner with some buckets so that they can also get started with task management. And then finally, we have what we call a welcome package, where we are sending a welcome message to the team, the owner of the team, and then, of course, the users, to explain a bit about what the team is about, what is inside it, and all of that information. We are also going to pin a library with training material in the general channel, where the users and the owner can find information on how to work with teams, because it could be that it is their first team, and it's just easy to have some best practices and some guidance in there. And then we are also going to add the actional owner of the team inside the team, so that they don't get the team and then the channels are added. They just get the team as it is completed.
Yeah, so let me quickly jump in and explain why we desperately needed to get rid of that wiki. Because yes, you and I, we are born in SharePoint land, but not everyone in this user group is born in SharePoint land. So let's explain a little bit what is that wiki. So apart from not looking good and not providing the best user experience, and that I'm a OneNote lover, really, the wiki has some issues. So the wiki is a hidden SharePoint library. And if a user decides to remove the wiki tab from the team and it says remove and it says not delete, then the hidden SharePoint library gets hard deleted, which means that all content of that wiki is gone. And this is not revocable. So if we use that for the knowledge management in our team, and I just need to click 2 times to just hard delete it, and there is no way to get this back, then I would say I will put my users at risk. And of course, we could train people now and say, hey, just don't press this button. And what happens if we tell people don't press this button? They will press this button. So whoever has kids can. So I think you get what I mean. And this is why we thought it is a bad idea that a team and each channel has a wiki by default, and therefore we wanted to get rid of all the wikis that get provisioned. So we delete them in our flows, and of course users could create new channels after this first provisioning process, after they said, hey, I need to have these 5 channels because I know what I'm doing. But if they never worked with a wiki because we advised them to use OneNote instead, then I think risk is seriously lower than it was before. And the thing why we thought that it would be good to pin training material, which sits perhaps on a communication side, so not in the SharePoint side that backs up the team, is because just because we assume that people know how to use Teams does not mean that they are actually able to do this. So you know, we all live and breathe in Teams since a year now, but people are very comfortable now doing video conferencing, but actually collaboration is another level. And therefore we thought it could be a good idea to add this as a tab to the channel general, so that when users arrive, that they not only see a welcome message and that everything is already there, but that they can find training material and have a curious look around and educate themselves.
Yeah, and then I think it's time for the demo. So
it's demo time, huh?
Yes.
Okay, wait a second. Okay, so we made an app. We called it Teams Advisor. What you could see here is we quickly explain what this app about and guide our user through different steps. And first, of course, we want to clarify, does this user seriously have the need for a team? Because just because we work in Teams does not mean that the concept of a Microsoft Teams team is actually the right approach. So if someone says, hey, I just want to occasionally chat with some people, and maybe I want to share some documents, and this is just occasionally, then I would not say that this already is a Microsoft Teams team. Then I would advise to say, hey, perhaps you will start with a group chat, and if you really outgrow this, we can easily get you a team. And if this is more like, hey, I want to have a community of interest, we all know this is more a Yammer use case than it is a Teams use case. And of course, even if the number of users who can be a member or a guest or an owner in a Teams team, even if that grows, I'm not super convinced that Teams is always the best solution. So sometimes communities are better in Yammer, and teams working on specific goals are better in Teams. But if they say, hey, I really want to have dedicated and secure digital workplace from a project team or from our department, then they will get that team, and we advise, yes, let's do that. And what I did was I created a steps log, which means so we have a couple of steps in this app to go, and we will always provide first information like, hey, these are the 3 roles that you can find in Teams. So there are owners and members and guests. And after that, we will give the user the possibility to say, okay, and now you need to create that team. So what should be the name and who should be the owner? Knowing what an owner is allowed to do or what is the responsibility of an owner. And without filling that in now, of course, let's proceed to some next steps. We will provide information about channels, and we will provide information about metadata, and we will, of course, provide information about planner and the buckets as well. And we will always log those steps. And if we come to an end, we say, hey, you made it. You may now just like submit whatever you did. And by pressing this submit button, all the data that the user puts in gets logged. And as Carmen already said, we use Dataverse for Teams. So we did not go for a SharePoint list because that would be really, really painful to do this in SharePoint. And I say this coming from a SharePoint background. So what we did is we have a lot of tables, and in all these tables, of course, reflect the child flows that Carmen already talked about. And we will use that in the AgileLogic app to provision the team. Back to you, Carmen.
Yes. Let me take over. There we go. So I have just started a fresh run of the Logic app so that I can also show you what it looks like, what the result looks like, so we can see that running here. But first, let's take a look at what those Logic apps look like. So as you can see, I have one main Logic app and then 5 child Logic apps. And looking at the main Logic app, boom, we will see that it is triggered when a record is created in that Dataverse table, in that main Dataverse table where all of our teams requests live. Then I'm initializing a lot of variables, which is not that interesting. I'm waiting 1 minute to add the channels because in Dataverse you can only relate records to a record that has already been created. So that team is created first, or that request is created first, and then the channels are linked to it, the lists and the libraries are linked to it, etc. And then I have my 3 resources, or my 3 types of resources, or actually 4. I have the team first that will be created, then the lists and libraries, then the planner plan, and then I'm finishing off with the welcome actions. And here you can see really clearly that I am doing all of the logic of getting the information from Dataverse and putting in the right format to just have one call to my child Logic app, which then doesn't care about the format that it gets the information in, or the format that the information is in the data source. It just gets the information in a specific format, and then it does the necessary actions. It doesn't care about the logic. My create team child Logic app doesn't care about the fact that later on I will be provisioning a list and a library, and we can have multiple lists in a team, we can have multiple libraries in a team, and then for each list I will just list the related columns and put that in some JSON object, so that I can then give that to my child flow, and that will only create a list. It doesn't care that I'm creating other lists, etc. So I'm really splitting off all of that logic by using that main flow to put in the logic of I'm getting the information from Dataverse, I'm putting it in the right format, and then providing it to that child Logic app that will create a team with the channels. And then I'm finishing off with the welcome actions. And if we now look at one of those child flows to see what happens in there, let's look at the list one, and then edit that one. So that child Logic app is fairly simple. It just gets an HTTP request with the necessary inputs. Then I'm again initializing a variable, and then for each list column I'm going to determine what type of column it is, because of course we have multiple column types in SharePoint, and then depending on the column type I am going to make sure that let's take for example a date column type. I'm going to append the information of that column to the array that contains all of my columns. And then with all of that information, I am going to put in a request to Graph to create the list inside the team that I have just created, or inside a team that is being created in the main flow. And then I'm responding to my main logic app to say that, hey, this was successful. And this is the way that all of these child logic apps are built up. They just care about the logic that they need. So the library and the list flow, they need that column type to know which type of column that they need. The planner flow needs to know, or only takes care of the fact that instead of one HTTP request, I have to put in a separate one for the buckets. So they really only care about their logic, not about the others. And so let's see. The main flow that I started has created my team in the meantime. So you can see that it's fairly quick. And it was the Team Awesome event where I have 4 additional channels that were created. Marketing, planning, speakers, and sponsors. We can see that in the general channel, our service account has put in a welcome message, welcome to the new team. Our training materials are pinned, and we don't see a wiki in any of these channels because those have been deleted. Now, for now, the list and the library that are provisioned, or the lists and the libraries that are provisioned, aren't pinned inside any of the channels yet. That's something that we still want to add in the future. But if we go to SharePoint and we go to the site contents, we will see that I have created a library marketing material and a list sponsors. And inside that list, I have columns of different types. If I create a new item, we see that in this case, the title column, of course, and then a yes/no field, a Boolean, and a number field, a choice field, and then, of course, the basic attachments. So this is really a complete solution to provision all of those resources.
And this is really just like showcasing the power of Microsoft Graph, because of course, so we stumbled upon that. So we can provision lists and libraries and columns and views even with Graph API, but we can also do this with SharePoint REST. But if I want to create a library and add some columns and add those columns then to the default view, I need to make 3 calls. And if I want to do the same thing with Graph, I only need 1 call. And this is just like making our flows so lean, and just like it's easy. It's way much easier than, it's not so complicated and so overcrowded. And we really like that.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah, so and now we are seeing, or I can see a very nice question in the chat, which means, is this demo somewhere in your Git, which means GitHub? But no, haha, I would say not yet, because not yet, because yeah, so we have big plans. We want to open source that. So we want everyone to benefit from that. We do not only want you to have that, but to contribute to it. So if you say, hey, but I want to have, I don't know, additionally, I want to have something, then please do so. Please contribute to it, give back to community and use what you like to. If you say, but hey, I don't need a welcome package, or I want to do something else, you are free to use that and just make the team of your dreams. And of course, use that in the organizations that you love to give back to them so that they will have the teams of their dreams. So this will soon be available on GitHub. And Keith, I don't say this anymore. So respecting the chat. So this is what we had in mind. And I think we even have some suggestions where we want to work on in the future. So still, this is our minimal lovable product. It's not viable, but it's already lovable. So adding assets to tabs, approvals as well. So I think we saw this generic Teams approval process. We saw this a gazillion of times, but I know that organizations love that. So we we did not want to demo this here because we know how that works. If not, I think people will just like now chime in and add some links to the chat where it's explained how this works. But if you want that, of course, you can add it once it's open sourced. We want to add members, adding externals. So this is a major thing because all organizations ask for it. So how do we make sure that we can invite externals and then add them as guests to teams, and perhaps they need some extra approval, or they need to either, I don't know, sign our data security advice or whatsoever. So we can add that. Adding a notebook. In OneNote, of course, private channels could be a good idea as well. And if you are if you have any ideas, you are more than welcome to give ideas and even to work on them. And we will be completely transparent and give you all the code. So now that we have beautiful YAML, we can actually do that. And yeah, we thought it was a nice idea to give back to community. And I am so super happy with this result already, and so super happy to work together with Carmen. And yeah, so I think
Same for me.
Yeah.
It's the first time we're showing it as well, so it's
yeah, as well.
Yeah.
So I would say thank you for attending our session. Which questions do you have, or what did you find super valuable? And no one dares to ask a question.
I thought the idea of the collaboration contract was just awesome in the first place. That was the thing that was like, oh, I want one of those.
Yeah, so it's just like, so you know, I still talk with users sometimes, and it's just like super valuable if there is shared vision on how are we going to work together. So if we don't just like assume that everyone knows how to do that, because actually none of us ever learned how to collaborate. So if we learned how to cooperate, but that's a different thing. So cooperation means I have my goal and you have your goal, and perhaps we just help each other a little bit, but there is no shared vision and no shared goal towards that. And collaboration really means we have a shared vision and we want to achieve the same thing.
Would you mind sharing with the gang about Graph a little bit? Because I know you did 100 days of Graph, wasn't it, or 30 days of Graph?
Oh, it was only 30. So in the meanwhile, yeah, now it's it's 100 days. So Microsoft Graph is a set of APIs in M365, and so I started, I don't know, 1 or 2 years ago with doing that because I felt like the options that I had in Power Automate were just like so limited, and when I started with that, it was not even possible to create a new folder in your OneDrive via Power Automate, which we back in the days called Microsoft Flow. So I was not able to do that because there was no action for that. So, and because I wanted to do that for my personal use case, I needed to learn how to use the Graph API. And I strongly encourage everyone who's not familiar with that to join the 30 days with Microsoft Graph Challenge. So you will easily find that if you Google it. I can provide the link as well later to really leverage what you can do in Power Automate and what you can do in Power Apps as well. And call any API that you want. And especially, of course, Graph is a very, very nice idea. And now we can create teams without calling Graph because it is in preview a usual action in Power Automate and Logic Apps as well. But for creating more assets, we still need to do that, and it's super powerful. I blogged like a gazillion times about it, so I'm a Graph fangirl. I think it's fair enough to say that. So strongly encourage everyone to learn more about it.
Awesome.
Yay! So Nigel Price is asking the next question: how do you check to see if a team already exists? What permissions do you use to achieve this? Carmen, perhaps this is more a question for you.
Well, in our current solution, we actually don't check to see if a team already exists. But as Michael mentioned lower in the chat, you can get a list of all teams through Graph, and then just compare them. If you're afraid that you're going to create a team that already exists, you can compare them using a flow, or of course using a logic app.
Yeah, one more idea would be also setting up a blacklist, just like which names aren't allowed.
Yes.
Like, I don't know, Death Star or something like that, so that people. So for this rule does not apply to me, obviously, but that people are not allowed to use just like common departmental names for their teams, because then usually SharePoint site already exists, and then we have two, and then they just do _1. So just like giving a little more guidance on how they should name a team would be nice as well, even just like with prefixes or something like that. So again, minimal lovable product approach. So we first wanted to get this out and say, hey, this is our idea, and you're always welcome to contribute to it. What's the difference between Microsoft Request a Team and this solution is a question by Nigel Price. So the difference is that we do not only provision a team, but ask users what they really need. And usually what I want and what I need, it's two different things. So we first educate users and say, hey, this is why you should have more than one library, because most of the times you will need to have different sets of metadata. And this is why more channels will not solve your problems, because metadata is created on library level. It's not created on a folder level. If we just create folders after folders after folders and over again, we will just repeat our old mistakes from working on-prem. So we will not be doing this. So after educating users, we will then ask them, and now that you are just like smarter, what do you want to have? And this is a big difference to the Microsoft's Request a Team application, which you can find in the amazing app templates. Okay, some more questions. You can unmute yourself, people.
What's the next thing you want to add?
I think private channels. So I think
OneNote.
there's, yeah, OneNote. OneNote is very, very high on the list, and private channels as well. So I'm not a super big fan personally for private channels, but I know that customers are, and so I'm more customer obsessed. So I would like to do that. Yeah. Cool. So question is, who would like to use it? Please raise your hands. You know this awesome raise your hand feature in Teams? Can you do that?
Yeah.
Woohoo! Okay, next question. Who would like to contribute to it? Who would like to work on that and say, hey, I'm going to add a feature, or I'm going to help to add a feature, or I'm going to write documentation, or I'm going to test something?
I'll break it for you.
Nice.
I'm really good at breaking things.
Yeah, so you're a perfect tester. So
Yeah,
this is my kids. They can break everything. So they will become software testers. So this is what I assume. Testing and breaking things is awesome. Okay, so again, thank you very much. And back to you, Keith.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you. And Carmen, thank you for blowing our minds with Graph. You know, I still remember when you kind of pushed the boat and said, I'm going to take this kind of plunge and do this development thing, and it's Every time you present, Louisa, it's just like I look back and I'm like, oh, I'm so warm and fuzzy, and it's just knowing what it meant to you not to do it, and what it means to everybody now for you to do it, and to partner with Carmen, who's got such awesome experience. I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to come up tonight, to come with us tonight to London. And spend time with us. Obviously, like not as good as last time because we were all in person and down the pub afterwards, but we're getting there. We're getting there slowly but surely, washing our hands and killing the COVID germs. Right. So next is the. I mean, I look at his picture and I just want to be him. Look at him. This is so damn handsome. It's Benedict, and we're going to be talking about ALM. And if you don't know what that means, you're about to. And you should be doing it. You should have no excuse for not doing it. And if your customers or your companies ask what it is, you should spend a lot of time with them, because it's one of those things that once you do it, it's like the belt around your pair of trousers. Yes, you can wear your pair of trousers, but without ALM, you walk out the house, and more often than not, the wind's going to blow and your trousers are going to fall down if you lose a little bit of weight. So there's my analogy for ALM. Benedict, take it away, my friend.
Thank you. First question, is my screen like the wrong way around?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes.
I have to change that.
I thought it was kind of like a part of the demo.
No. Now it should.
No, it ran the other way. Looks more interesting.
Yes.
Good ALM practice makes it the right way round. I thought there was going to be a story behind it.
Perfect. So then we get started with ALM for the Power Platform. First of all, I want to talk about myself a bit. So Benny Bergman is my name. I'm a Power Platform consultant at CRM Consulterna here in Sweden, Stockholm. I'm coming from Germany, moved to Sweden 3.5 years ago, roundabout. I'm coming from .NET development background. Added Angular after that, and moved on to Dynamics, or as it is usual, I was thrown into a project. So I have not chosen Dynamics, but Dynamics choose me. And then Power Platform as it is today. So my first contact with Dynamics was 6.5 years ago back in Germany. But enough about me. The goals of the session today is bringing everyone on the same level in regards of ALM, introducing a basic ALM process, and then showing some possibilities for quality gates and adding more complexity to a normal pipeline. And the agenda is, first of all, leveling, then basic ALM process, and then adding complexity, as mentioned. I would like to start with some sentence that Nick Dolman said. No project is too small for ALM, and that's perfectly how it is. And Keith, you mentioned as well, ALM gets too little attention in every project. So everyone should have some ALM process and invest some time in it, because it can save a lot of time in the long run. So let's begin with the first part. What is ALM and why do we need it? So ALM is application lifecycle management, but what's an application lifecycle? And here we have the beginning is planning an application. We go over to development. That was my Siri, sorry. Developing the solution, testing the solution, deploying it, and maintaining it, and then the cycle begins over again. And when I talk about ALM, I usually talk about automation of the deployment part. And that's the thing what we want to take a look at today. If we have some time, we will add a bit more to the development part as well. What is the goal there? We want to minimize manual work because manual work always means mistakes. So we want to deploy our stuff automatically so that not everyone has, or not always when we want to deploy, someone has to sit there and wait until the solution is exported and imported. As Keith mentioned, it can take quite some time. yeah, as mentioned, so it will increase the quality as well, because if a process is established, you don't have errors in it usually. On the other hand, if you do it manually, you can forget stuff. You can do stuff in wrong order, or miss steps in your process. So it's better to have it automated. But first of all, we want to talk about solutions in Dataverse. So we have this thing of solutions. Those are containers, and this means that if you have two solutions, A and B, and or you have a contact entity, and this contact entity is within both of those solutions. If you add a field to contact, you also have to add it to both of the solutions if you want to have it in your solution. So they are just containers. If you change something on the field and the field is in both solutions, it will be changed in both solutions. This means, let's say you have one field and you change it to required, then it will be required in both solutions. You don't have to do it in both solutions. It's automatically there. And then some hint, never ever use to include all components. And the reason for that is if you have an own solution which you deploy managed to test and production, as it should be, I think, and you include all the components of contacts, and you also have an ISV solution managed, which you have in your development environment, for example, as well, which introduce an own view. This will come in your own solution as well, probably, and then it's nearly impossible to delete one of those two, because they have dependencies to each other. So really only include the stuff you change to your own solution. The next thing is you can configure solutions. And what I mean is you can change the properties, whether or not it's allowed to change stuff in the solution, or change the display name, for example, and so on. This can be changed and configured per unmanaged solution. And solutions only contain customizations. What does that mean? We have different things in Dataverse. On the one hand, we have customizations, which are entities, fields, business rules, and so on. Those are solution aware, so you can add it to solutions. On the other hand, we have data, mainly entity records. Those are not solution aware, so you cannot add a specific contact record, for example, to a solution. There are obviously exceptions to that. For example, environment variables. Those are basically data records, but still they are solution aware. Same with the application detection rules. Actually, the application detection rules are not solution aware, but yeah. And then it's important to have purpose or supplier separation of your solution. So what does mean is if you have different applications you develop, you should have different environments for those, because otherwise you can build dependencies between those different solutions, which will be quite complex to handle in the long run. And the last part is you can either patch them or clone them. Patching is if you create a patch of a solution, you will get a new solution container which is empty, and you can just add the stuff you want to deploy, which makes the deployment much faster, but nearly unhandleable in an automated process. So patches are not to be used in automation, unfortunately. And cloning is just a new version with everything which is in the solution. You can have unmanaged or managed solutions. Unmanaged solutions you can add components to them, remove components, or delete components out of them. You can export them as unmanaged or as managed. And if they will be deleted, they will not uninstall the included components. And on the other hand, you have managed. You cannot add components to them. You cannot remove components from them. They cannot be exported. And if they will be deleted, everything which is included will be deleted as well. And the guideline from Microsoft is having managed solutions in every environment which is not development. And I know that's a huge discussion, but I usually follow this. You can either update or upgrade a solution. And here the managed comes in as well. We will see that. If you update a solution, it will install all the new components that were added to the solution and will update existing components. If you upgrade them, you also will install new components and update existing components. And it's only available when the version will be higher. So if you export version 1 from development, deploy it as managed to test, and the next time you export version 1.1, for example, then you can upgrade your test environment because the version is one higher or several highs. And it also, and that's the most important part, I think, it will also delete stuff from your target environment, which was deleted from the solution. So it will clean up your target environment if you do an upgrade. But it's only possible with managed solutions. It shouldn't be a problem. Let's talk about environments. Usually you have development, then you have test, and then you have production. There are different environments that could come in addition to that. I usually talk about a so-called JIT build environment. It's a just-in-time build environment, but actually I don't use it so often in production or at the customer because there are quite some problems with it. I hope Microsoft will fix them soon because it's quite hard to fire up a on-the-fly environment within your pipeline, just for your pipeline. And there are some limitations regarding different languages and the time. It takes quite a long time to do that. And if you have ISV solutions, there's no good way to install them. So we will not talk about that longer down the presentation. You could have a development environment, and maybe the customer wants to do stuff by themselves. Then you would have an internal development environment, and then it could be that you as the supplier have the base solution and the customer builds on top of that. So if that happens, you will deploy your solution to internal dev and then both of the solutions to test and further on, for example. And there could be furthermore environments. Usually I have an evaluation environment for the release waves because I don't want to have them. I want to test them quite early, the new stuff, but I don't want to have them in my usual environment pipeline, because they could break my deployment. And then you normally often have a hotfix environment and maybe a performance test environment as well. Good. Let's talk about different tests you could run. You could run unit tests for your code. You could run UI tests, which is user interface tests. So with Easy Repro, it really opens the browser and clicks around in Dataverse, creates stuff, and checks if everything works like it should, which isn't part of an integration test. You could do regression tests or load tests to see does my environment withhold a certain amount of people working on it. If you have a really big installation, you want to test if it's not crashing when like 1,000 users come into the system. and performance tests. So how fast is it? You can do automated smoke tests. We usually do that. So if we deploy to test or production, we run a handful of tests which just check if everything is working as it should, are all the flows activated, and so on and so forth. There are limitations. So there could be problems with flows that have other connectors, like, so not the Dataverse connector or CDS connector. For example, SharePoint and third-party connectors, those might need manual work whenever they will be deployed, unfortunately, to get them connected again. Then embedded Canvas apps could result in problems when you deploy them automatically. And I had some problems with environment variables earlier, but I hope that those are mainly fixed now, since they are generally available. So it should be fixed. So then let's come into the more interesting part, I think. It's how is a basic ALM process look like, or how does it look like? First of all, most of the projects I know cannot recover if def is lost. And that's because if you deploy manage to test and production, and somehow someone has a bad day and clicks on the wrong button and deletes your development environment, your unmanaged solution is gone. You cannot recover. You cannot export from test or production because those are managed. To prevent that, the approach should be that you're using a source control centric approach. This means that you export your solution and save it as unmanaged in your source control. With that, you can always just package the solution again and deploy it to a new development environment. Or if you want to have a feature environment, just to develop some features or configure some features, you can just spin up a new environment, and then this one will be managed from your last version, so to say. And then we also have to talk about prerequisites. You need, for everything we talk about now following, you would need an Azure DevOps project. And there you have to have installed the Power Platform build tools. I will show them to you in a minute. And you need connections to your dev and test environment. Otherwise, our pipeline doesn't know where to get our solution or where to deploy our solution to. But which pipelines do we want to build for our basic ALM process? We want to create one pipeline, or we want to have one pipeline which creates an export from development. And the second pipeline should release this export to our next environment in our pipeline, or in our environment flow, which is usually test. So how do they look like? The first pipeline will export as unmanaged from our development environment, unzip the file, or unzip the zip file we get, check it into our development branch, and then export it as managed. And this managed zip file will be our pipeline's artifact. And the second pipeline will get this artifact and deploy it to test, deploy it to whatever environment that comes then thereafter. For now, for our demo, it will only be test there. So the whole process looks like this: exporting unmanaged, unzipping the file, checking into development branch, exporting managed, get the artifact, deploying this one to the next environment. Let's jump into the demo then. Just have to click the right button. Here we are. This is my own Azure DevOps. And here are the Power Platform build tools, which you can just install here. If you go to this link, I can send this link later. And then you are able in your whole tenant to use in every pipeline those Power Platform build tools as steps. Blurry, that's not so nice. Let me fix that. Is it better? Nope.
It's still quite blurry.
Very blurry. Okay.
I've sent the link in the chat. If anyone wants to skip the window, just open it up.
Oh, that was better for a minute.
Yeah, that's better, isn't it?
It was much sharper for a minute there.
Let me just share my screen then. Maybe that's easier. Next, and back in a minute. Is this better?
Much.
Yep. That's
Much?
better.
Yes, perfect,
Agreed.
perfect. So let's see, where is my screen now, which I want to have. Here we are. So I zoom in a bit. So those are basically the Power Platform build tools, which can be installed here. And then if you are in your Azure DevOps and have like a pipeline opened, you can add steps from this build tools there. And those are the official Microsoft build tools. They are released like a few months ago and will be developed further on. So I would say that's the first point to go. And if there is something which is missing in here, then there are additional stuff or build tools from others from the community. But those are the first I would try to use. And the second prerequisite we talked about were the service connections, so that our pipeline knows which environment to request. So here I created one to my development environment, one to my test or a trial environment, which I use as test, and a solution checker, which we will use later. So let's see. We have a repository here. It's yeah, not the nicest repository, but one standard repository. You have easy repro for UI tests, some plugins, shared stuff, some tools, and web resources, and maybe some configuration export, something like that. And we want to save our solution, which we have in Dataverse, here as well as an unzipped version. So let's look at this one. If I go to my Dataverse, it's my development environment, and I have a ALM demo solution, and it contains a table and a Canvas app, a very simple Canvas app, and maybe nearly completely empty table, just to demo stuff. And then we have a pipeline, which is create export from dev. I will run it and in the meantime explain it, because it takes some time to run. And agent. Let me just open it. So what is this pipeline doing? First of all, we have to install the tooling, Power Platform tool installer. We execute this step. And that's important, and we have to do it all the time, because we never know which agent we get from Azure to process our pipeline. And it might be that this tooling isn't installed there yet. So we have to make sure that it is, and therefore we always have to execute this step. After that, we want to publish our customizations in our environment. To do so, we have an extra step, and we choose service connection to the environment, which is in my case the development environment I configured earlier. I use service principals usually, so application registrations, but you also could use just username and password if you want to. After that, we export our solution, and this time as unmanaged, so we do not check this little checkbox over here. This one is unchecked. And then after that, we unpack our solution. There's an extra step here as well. And then the input is the same as the output of the export stuff. And then we have a command line which will check it in to our repository, basically. And after that, we will export the solution once more, this time as managed. And here we have checked this checkbox. And the last step is to publish artifacts, which is only our managed zip file. And if you noticed, maybe you have, or I configured a solution name as a variable over here. So we go to variables, we have a solution name, which has a default value as ALM demo. And if I run my pipeline, I could change it to anything else. So I could say, oh, today I want to export a different solution. I don't know. But normally I want to export ALM demo. Oh no, wrong button. Yes, so that's the first pipeline. Let's see if this one is ready. Not yet. Which step are we in? Oh yeah, okay. So nearly ready. It has done everything. So if we take a look at our repository, we should have a folder which is called solutions. Yes. And it contains our ALM demo, a folder for the ALM demo solution. And in there we have all the configuration for entities as XML. And there would be more if we had a bigger solution, but this one is quite easy. One problem which we will have a solution for later is this very ugly MS app file. So that's the Canvas app. And we cannot take a look at the Canvas app because it's also some kind of zip file. So that's a bit ugly, but we will take a look at that later. So that's the first step. We have our solution as an unzipped or unmanaged solution as unzipped in our source control. And we have created a artifact in our pipeline, which is the managed solution. And this one can now be used by a release pipeline. So I have a release pipeline here. I will create a release and deploy it, and then explain what's happening. Let's see if I have an approval. Yeah, okay, it's running. So let's take a look at this one. So it has an artifact which comes from our create export from dev. So our first pipeline is the input to the second pipeline, so to say. And then it has at the moment just one step, which is to my trial environment, but you could add more stages here, either parallel or even after a stage, so that they are coming after each other. You can configure it that you always have to deploy here first before you are allowed to deploy here, and so on and so forth. So we will delete that, actually. Yes. And those are quite easy. They do install the tooling again, and then they take the solution which comes as an artifact from our input and deploy them to our target environment, which we can select here. It's the same list of connections, and then we make a publish customizations, which is not necessary. Actually, we can skip the last part because we are using managed here, so it should not be needed to do publish customizations. But I do it usually because I want to make sure that it is published, just to be safe. Yeah, that's basically it for the release pipeline, and it's still importing, unfortunately. Even so, it's a small solution. Should be ready soon. But we can maybe go back to the slides in the meantime. Are there any questions so far? Let's look at the chat. Yeah, just a tip with Power Automate triggers. That's true. They could be a pain. Oh, actually, now it's ready. No, it's publishing customization. So let's go to the next part. Yes. So there is a question in the chat: can a Canvas app be put into production without user involvement, reconnecting to SQL, etc.? Now that's what I mentioned. If you have connectors which are not the CDS connector, then you usually have to go in and connect them again. So the CDS connector should work deploying a Canvas app. It's just this, but SQL and SharePoint and whatever other might be a problem. Yes. So that's a basic ALM process. It's quite easy, or yeah, it's a small process. It just does the stuff that it exports our solution, stores it in source control, creates an artifact, and deploys it further on. But you could add more complexity to it. For example, you could add quality gates. I have a list of possible quality gates later. You can unpack your Canvas app now, since I don't know, January. You can do that. You can deploy web resources and plugins automatically in your pipeline to ensure that really the version you want to deploy is in development. Because what usually happens is a developer goes in and says, okay, I want to develop a plugin, or I want to change a plugin or change a web resource. And then they develop, they test, maybe they deploy an unfinished version to development, and then they leave for the day. And you create your export every night, whatever, and deploy it to test. And the next day, the tester comes to the office and test environment is broken because some unfinished stuff were moved from development to test, which is maybe okay, but you don't want to move unfinished stuff to production. So what you can do is, before you export from development, you always take the last version that is in your main branch, which should be the stable branch, and deploy it to development. And then you export and deploy it further on. So that with that, you can make sure that only the really tested and stable stuff comes to production. The question is, can you deploy a solution to database for Teams? I am not aware of that, and I don't think it's possible. That's my last information, at least. Yeah, unfortunately. What else could you do? You could have automated deployment. So as I mentioned, you could say, I want to deploy to test every night, so that my tester, when they come to the office at the next day, they get the latest and greatest in their environment. And So please export at the night and deploy it to test. You could have quality checks for pull requests to increase your quality even under development. So I think no one ever should work on master branch directly. You should always create pull requests to it and run your unit tests, for example, automatically. Only if those are green, then you are allowed to merge the pull request. You could create environments on the fly. I mentioned it briefly. There are some pitfalls with it. So at the moment, there is no smooth way of doing that, but I hope they improve it. And you could move configurations. So let's say, or before we had environment variables, usually, or at least every project I was in, we had a system settings table, and then we had our settings in it. But those are records, so we cannot move it within a solution. But still, we have to. We had the need to deploy them to the next environment, because the configuration should be in sync as well, normally. And this could be done with pipelines as well. You could run, for example, the Microsoft's, what is it called now? Configuration migration utility to export data from one environment and import it to the next environment. And this could be automated in your pipeline as well. We talked briefly about quality gates. And there are different quality gates you could use or could implement. So for example, you could have a solution checker. So before you deploy it to next environment, or before you even export it or unzip the solution, you could throw it against the solution checker and see if this one is finding any errors or warnings. And then you could either end your pipeline because you don't want to deploy stuff that has warnings or errors, or you could proceed and have just the solution checker for information. You could run your unit tests, for example. You could say, okay, I want to run all my unit tests, and only if those are green, then I want to proceed. You could run easy repro UI tests or any other UI test you have. You could run integration tests and so on and so forth. So if you come back to our pipeline we looked at, we had this process here: exporting, unzipping, checking into dev, export managed, get this artifact and deploy it to the next environment. Now we want to add some more complexity. So we want to add a solution checker in between. So we export on our unmanaged solution and check it against the solution checker, and only if this one is green we want to proceed. Otherwise we want to end our pipeline. And the next thing we want to add is unpacking this canvas app, because this MS app file is really ugly, and we want to have the code to be able to see what really happens inside of our canvas app. And as I mentioned, this one is only possible since January, since Microsoft has released the, now I have to come, Power Apps Super Solution Packager, Power Apps Solution Packager, it's called. And this one can unpack Canvas apps and split it into XML and JSON and YAML, sorry. Unfortunately, that's not part of the Power Platform build tools yet, but I was told it will come to them as well. So hopefully this step we already have in the solution or in our pipeline will unpack Canvas apps as well in the future. So let's come to the next demo then. Oh, you haven't seen? Have you seen? Yeah, you have seen my screen. Yes, perfect. So here we are. So we're back in Azure DevOps, and the pipeline is ready. Yeah, exactly. So now it has deployed to our test environment. Let's see if this is the case as well. I switch to my try, which expires tomorrow. Yeah, so now we have the LM demo is here as well. So we have successfully deployed it from development to my test environment. It contains our table and a very easy Canvas app. And it is managed as well. Yes. So everything as expected. Nice. Going back here. So what we want to do now is within our create export from dev pipeline, we want to check against the solution checker. So we edit it. And let's see, we want to publish customizations. We want to export our solution. And then we want to add our solution checker. So we click on plus and then we write Power Platform. And then we have all the steps that are in this build tools. And there is a checker down here. And this one has to be configured. We also have to have a service connection here. And so we take the solution checker. And then we have to say which or where is the zip file to find. And this one is the output of the previous step. This, and then we need to say which rule set we want to have. And here we want to have solution checker. And then you can have configure your threshold. So you can say if the solution checker is answering a warning or a high issue, should this be an error or should it be critical? Or so which level should we consider an error? Usually I use high. And then how many errors are okay because we interrupt or cancel our pipeline. And I usually don't want to have errors at all. So I leave it at 0. And then we want to fail our Power Apps checker analysis when errors occur. So that's okay. If we now save and queue this, it should run it and throw it against our solution checker. Have this open in the background. And then the second part we wanted to take a look at is this nasty MS app file. As mentioned, we can't do anything with it. We don't know what was changed. We don't know anything about it within our source control. So it could be broken. We don't know. And we don't know what was changed when by whom. So to be able to play the blame game, we want to see what happens in the MS app file. So to do that, we go to our same pipeline, click on edit, and then we want to, after we have exported and unpacked our solution, but before we check it into our source control, we want to add another step. And that's a command line step. Let's back a bit because, as I mentioned, it was released recently. Power Apps Solution Checker a few months ago, and it's not included in Solution Packager. And it's not included in the build tools yet because it's only in beta, unfortunately. But it works quite well. So here we have the Solution Packager tool, and they explain how to use it. And but it's only on GitHub at the moment, so it's not the right one. Sorry about that. That's the one. Nope. That's bad. Yes. I have to go to. I know that there is a link somewhere. Sorry about that. Wait, I have to write it also. Here we are. So Scott made an excellent video about it and added the link here as well somewhere. Here we are. So it was released in January, and they have it in a GitHub repository here, and explaining how to use it. So what you have to do is you download the repository, you build the file, and then or the project, and what you get is some files which are Passopa. The passopa.exe and some dependencies, and this one has to be in the repository because it's not in our build tools yet, so we have to have it here. So I have added it already, and we will use this exe file now in our pipeline. So after we have unpacked our solution and before we check it in, so check in. So we want to unpack the Canvas app as well. So let's see. Once more, if we go to solutions, ILM demo, Canvas apps, this one, the ILM demo app and some number, this one we want to export or unzip. So to do so, it's actually it's just one line. So do that. We can find the tooling or the Passopa exe in our source control. So we have the build source directory, then we have a folder which is tools. In there we have a folder which is Passopa, and then we have the Passopa as exe. This one we want to run, and we want to unpack something. That's why we have the -unpack here, and then we give it the MSF file we want to unpack, and this one can be found in our source directory as well. Solutions, then the solution name that comes in as a variable again, Canvas apps, and then in this case I hard-coded my my MSF file. And this one will create, if you don't configure it otherwise, it will create a new folder in this Canvas app folder, which is called as my MSF file, and then it will add _source, and in that we will have all the exported stuff. So let's try that. So this one was the pipeline we run earlier, which is the Power Platform checker. We have added the Power Platform checker here. As you can see, it has checked our ILM demo zip file against the checker. There were medium issues, 3 of them. Could be my lack of Canvas app skills, and but no major or high issues, so that was fine, and we were able to proceed and pack our stuff, or unpack and create our artifact. So that's fine. If you go to the agent, we have 2 artifacts created actually, and so one is our artifact we created earlier as well. It's our managed solution in our job folder. And then the checker creates its own artifact, which is a Sarif file. And issue result MD. So those can be used to go more in detail what was the issue or which issues were found and so on. So I actually wrote a blog post on how to use this SARI file. So if you're fancy to know how to. Yes. So this one is exporting the solution at the moment, which will take some time. We have a bit of time left, haven't we? Yes. So one thing I usually do to improve the quality a bit more, and for me it's a part of my standard ALM process. I do it in every project actually, or try to, if the customer lets me. But what I can do here now is there shouldn't be any protection. So I'm in the master branch. You can see it over here, and I can go into edit something, test, and commit it, and it works. So now I've changed something directly in the master branch. I've added a test here. I think that shouldn't be the case. So let's see if we can prevent that. Oh no. What was the problem here? Oh yeah, sure. I crashed it because I have made changes after it was checked out, but before it checked in. So I have to rerun it. Unfortunately. Run new. So we want to add a pipeline that will be run on every check-in, or at least every time we create a pull request, and it runs all our tests we have in our solution. So we create a new pipeline. That's fine. And this one should do some NuGet stuff. Install the tooling as well. It's the same with which we had for Power Platform build tools. You always have to install the tooling. Otherwise, you can't be sure that NuGet is installed. It should, but. And then we have to install the Visual Studio Test Platform installation. Install it, same thing. We have to run or build our solution, and then we have to run all the tests. So that's it. Demo CI, it's fine. Here. So this one will build our solution and run all the unit tests we have, all the tests we have. And now we go to branches. We have the master branch here, and we add branch policies. So I usually have it like I need at least one other person approving my changes or changes from anyone. Since I'm the only one here, I make it so that I can approve my own stuff. Otherwise, I'm never ever be able to commit stuff. All the commits should be resolved. You could do other stuff, so you always have to link a work item, for example, whatever you want to. And we want to have build validation. So we choose the demo CI we just created. And then basically that's it. It will be triggered automatically whenever a pull request is created. It is required, so it needs to be successful. Otherwise, we cannot merge the pull request. And it's up to date or valid for 12 hours. So if someone comes in after that and approves, we have to rerun the pipeline. So if I now go to the same file and try to delete this test, it should not work, hopefully. So now it says that I have to create a pull request. I cannot directly merge into this one. And now our pipeline is ready as well. So if we go to solution, Canvas app, there is now our source folder, which is the source of our Canvas app. And it contains the stuff we have, assets, if there would be images, for example, connections, data sources, everything you would like to leave. That's empty. And then you have it like in a human readable manner here in JSON, and you can see what was where is what, and then if something is changed here, for example, if I move a button on it or something like that, then you will see the width or the positioning changing in this file, and you know who has done it and what was done and so on and so forth. And with this tool, you can also pack it again and deploy it. So it's both ways, which is quite smooth, I think. Yes. So one thing with the policy we created, we also have to make sure that our pipeline can commit to our repository still. So we have to find it, repositories, demo, permissions. So we will always have like a build service down here, and there we have to say bypass policies when pushing to allow. Otherwise, this user will get an error because it tries to push to master directly. Yes. Let me think 1 minute. Yes, that should be it from the demo. So we now learned how to add some complexity, solution checker in this case, and unpacking the Canvas app as well. So the whole session's objectives were a basic ALM process, or introducing a basic ALM process for exporting a solution, storing it in source control, releasing it to the next environment, and then adding some complexity like quality gates, or in our case, unpacking Canvas app as well. So that's it from my side. Thank you for your attention. If you want to contact me, either on Twitter, LinkedIn, or via mail, and I have a blog where I wrote about most of the thing I talked about today. Thank you.
You know, there's an hour well spent just watching this on the playback. You know, it really is, because you have no idea the amount of times when you forget. Let's say you forget to export, right? Like you forget to export a solution at the end of the day, and you forget to turn it into build, and then something gets into your project, and you come back 6 months later, and the customer's like, "Oh, remember that thing you worked on, that demo you worked on? Can you bring that to me now?" And you go back and you look at the solution, and you don't realize there's some dependency thing in there that you just missed at the last minute, and then you got to go and tear it apart, put it back together again, go. But if you've got this thing set up, and you take this as like base level one, and you say, right, whenever I configure an environment, I'm going to make sure that I set up ALM to support that environment.
Yeah.
Then you don't have that problem. And it's like,
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
just,
And you could even have those pipelines as YAML in like some a template repository, and you just put it into there and configure it here and there, but then it works. So if you have done it, sometimes it takes not even an hour, I would say, if everything is with permissions all right. But yeah.
serious stuff. Has anyone else got questions for Benedict? Because I know it's an emotive subject, ALM, and some people go, "Oh well, you know, what's the point in it?" Because SharePoint, no Dataverse, all this kind of stuff. But I'd use them for whatever. I mean, I think that you should not be making apps and flows that aren't in solutions, because that's what they're there to do. They're there to they're your belt around your trousers, and without that, you just get arrested.
Yeah. So here we have a question from Cole Philip. How do you recommend structuring repositories in the case of multiple dependent solutions? Single Git repo or repo per solution or something else? So since the dependencies of the solutions do not matter in the repository, I think it's fine to have them in like the solutions folder and then have different folders for every solution there. Because the repository doesn't know that they have dependencies to each other. It's more like you have to have this knowledge. So that should be fine. I sometimes, maybe you have seen it, but sometimes I create an own repository just for all the solutions to have it clear, because not every developer needs to download all the solutions we have in the system. But that's more like, yeah, what's the taste of everyone is. Yeah. Any other questions in the chat? Yeah, Whale Hamza's solution checker or all his build tools are very great and have way more functionality than the one from Microsoft. But I still tend to first look at the Microsoft ones since those are the official ones. Yeah, I think that's all the questions in the chat. Are there any other questions?
I'm just looking.
I don't know why unmanaged. I always use managed if it's not dev. Because the question was if unmanaged, then why? Just to have some.
Yeah, but that's like the whole SharePoint, no SharePoint thing.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll be here all night on that one.
Yeah. If you ask like five different people, you get 6 opinions there, at least.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
I think that's about it, Benedict. Well, that rounds us up. And like I said, I'd love to warn you about Power Platform upcoming events in case you missed something. But like I said, there's one every other day of the week. So I guess it's a bit like buses. You wait all these years for one low code, no code platform to come along, and then they all come along at once. But what can you do? Well, we look forward to hosting you at our next event, which will be on the 15th of April. And I believe we already have speakers lined up for that, which is alarmingly organised of us. Isn't that right, Laura?
We have a speak. I'm hoping Al can remember what Thomas is going to be doing, because I can't remember. But Jess is going to come and do. I forgot what you do when you do the augmented reality in a Power App. Is that the right name? That's what Jess is going to come and do. What's Thomas going to do, Al?
Power Virtual Agents. Something to do with Power Virtual Agents.
Cool. I love a bit of mixed reality. Love a bit of Power Virtual Agents. Well, thank you very much for coming. I know there is a Badger happening soon at the virtual events hub.com. So if you're heading over to the Badger,
and can we add Alison's plug?
Oh, and Alison's plug. Go on. Where's Alison's plug?
Go on, Alison, unmute.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, if we're doing plugs, don't forget it's the new Between Two Ferns style virtual happy hour next Wednesday, and I managed to rile up Mark Smith last time, and this time I'll be trying to rile up Mark Christie, who has been insistent that he won't get riled up. So watch this space.
It sounds like you're doing a lot of riling.
I like to rile, you know me.
I've heard. Well, Well, if without further ado, if you want to go to the pub, virtualevent.hub.com, and there's the Thursday night bespoke badger. Please bear in mind, leave your sensibilities at the door, because there's a lot of swearing, drinking, and debauchery. It's a proper pub, but with no fighting, because guess what? We can't reach one another with this terrible COVID thing, but we can hurl insults, and we do that very well. So if I say see you next time on the 15th of April.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. It was
Cheers,
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, really,
Thank you.
really good
Two brilliant
sessions.
sessions. Thank you, Benedict and Louise and Carmen.
Now just realised we're all
Thank
muted
you.
throughout.
I will get the recorded copy up
Awesome.
ASAP and tweet it out and stuff.
Okay. It's good attendance. So obviously all the tweeting worked.
Tweeting worked, having some brilliant speakers, and the Microsoft part worked as well.
The Teams?
The reactor.
Oh, what happened there?
Well, no, so it's the meetup was done by Reactor, so that they send out an email as well to all their sign-ups and things.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Still don't want to get into bed with the Dynamics communities. Still think they're evil. But there you go.
Well, I think the reactor has just worked a bit easier just using the meetup for them, rather than everything that's.
Yeah, but we won't get we won't get that when lockdown ends if we're not in the DCI thing, because they won't give it to us.
What, the reactor?
Yeah, they won't give you the reactor unless you engage with DCI. They won't give you the.
What, even though Microsoft are bringing up something else? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, that something else is Dynamics communities. Microsoft are getting into bed deeper with Dynamics communities, because Dynamics communities is a failed organisation. So they're coming closer, something like that. That's what I heard on a grapevine anyway. I haven't paid attention to any MVP things. I haven't been on the MVP thing for ages, but I got an email the other day saying, do you want to bring your user group over? And I was like, do we really want to do that? I don't know, so I haven't answered it. It was not an email, it was a form or something. It was a website with a link in it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was bad before on that platform, but
and that's just like control us like the Borg or something. It's just like, and then they'll say that, you can say this and you can't say that. I mean, we got told off the other day for the quiz, and someone got told off for something else, and it's just like, look, really? I don't want to be part. Yeah, I don't want to be part. Say what I want, do what I want. If we'll deal with anything that happens in our own user group. Thanks very much. But if you don't like a badger, or you don't like an event or whatever, it's not got anything to do with you lot. It's what someone swore. Yeah, okay, all right, well done, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's the option of just firing up our own meetup and doing it completely independently.
I'm happy to fund that. I mean, I literally, that's what I said. Do we need a reactor? Can we find our own pub? Can we find our own venue? We did that before when the reactor wasn't available. It's not like we can't fund it, or we can't do something for it. So yeah.
But let's see what happens as it comes out of it, because we can. You're right. We can find a location, etc., etc. We can sort that. But if we can use something like the reactor, it's just easier.
Look, Laura, I'm the first person to say that all day long, of course, and I know how difficult it is to get into buildings anyway. But then, are we ever going to not be virtual again? I just do not know. It's hybrid. I think hybrid will be.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I think it's gonna be hybrid. And to tell you the truth, the reactor's got rid of its 9 screens. It's got one big screen, and they're aiming to be able to do hybrid.
Yeah, well, I've started investing in the bits to do it. That kind of webcam. I want to bring a webcam now. I want like a clip-on mic that feeds into the feed out.
And,
you know what I mean?
And
so
I've been doing the easiest way for me to have done contributions this year has been I do once a month or every couple of months a session with the reactor.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows that she knows that the London group would like to come back to that building.
Yep.
So I think as long as Microsoft don't do you can't do it, I think we will get back in.
It's just that you can't do it without D365, because I figured out the technology bit to do hybrid well, with regardless of the reactor, because you can't trust them with their AR, their AV. You can't trust any of them with AV. So I figured out what we do. I tested it out, right? Mobile phone, lapel mic. You use that in the pocket, and you put the person on Teams in your pocket. So you put your Teams in there. That goes in the back pocket with the lapel mic, right? So that's like your radio mic. That's on Wi-Fi in the building, and then you've got you've got another phone or laptop with a webcam pointing at the presenter at the front on another Teams thing. So you've just got them presenting and the sound. It works beautifully well.
We've been doing virtual church since lockdown started. So my other half has gone and bought a box so that you're not relying on a webcam, but you can rely on a video camera. So you can plug a video camera into a laptop. And we've been I picked up a Jabra speaker, which has been another great way of doing it, because it means other people can hear what's going on in the chat. So yeah, between us, so
you're between you. You're just going to start an AV company, aren't you? Just provide AV for user groups.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that it's not a business. It's definitely not a business. It's definitely not. It's not a going concern. But look, I mean, I think where it's possible, and yeah.
So on a serious note, should we be thinking about getting in for a July session into the reactor and see whether we or is that we thinking that's too early?
I don't think they've got a date yet for opening.
Okay.
They said all restrictions will lift in June, but I think the other thing as well is doing July is going to be tough, because it's like at some point someone's going to take some holiday. July is always bad for us, so let's probably postpone till sort of September-ish time, let the holidays get out of the way with, because what we don't want to do is go back and have our first in-person events. Mind you, everyone might turn up because they're all sick there for lockdown. You know, who knows? I need a reason to go uptown because I want to eat in some of the places I used to like eating. I'm just going to go up there and just roll around and just eat everything.
To tell you the truth, Keith, I just want to go somewhere where there's some people.
Yeah,
I am I mean, I love my family dearly, but I am so fed up of Zoom chats and only one person can talk at once. And
Laura wants a hug. That's the problem.
No,
I want a hug.
No, she wants to give people hugs.
Rewind. Laura wants to give people hugs.
Yeah, Nigel, I want to give people hugs. I want to see people's faces and laugh and etc. etc. Yeah. My family are fed up of having to give me hugs because I need extra hugs.
I just want to tut at people like I used to. I just want to be able to walk in the underground and just tut. Idiot. I'm really miss tutting at people. I tut through my mask, and it's always about social distancing. And in the supermarket, it's not as good as it used to be. Like, you know, that bit at King's Cross where it's one way, and people always walk the wrong way down the one way bit. And I really miss kind of like getting a bit too close. You can't do that with social distancing. That's what I really want to change when it comes to lockdown. It's not about hugs. It's just about tutting at people. Yeah. Right, I'm gonna go because I gotta go shopping.
I'm gonna go have some dinner.
Lockdown, safest time to go when it's dark.
Excellent. Well, great to see you all.
Much
love.
Guys.
Speak soon.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.